Welcome back to the Built Different podcast, fellas. Another great week, and daylight savings time to hit y'all as hard as us. We got a couple kiddos, and spring forward is easier than the fall, but I don't know. Did it hit you, Adam? I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at. You're probably crossing across 10 different time zones. So,
yeah, man, time zones have been a big deal for the last year or so, and I kind of lost track of where I'm at. I generally, though, I'm an early morning sunlight guy, so spring forward is the jam.
Yeah, definitely appreciate waking up earlier, and get a little extra love at night. But Brian, good to see you and I coordinated colors today.
Wait, daylight savings happened last night?
Yes.
Brian. I think I was out around that hour then.
Yeah. Is that why you missed like 10 of my meetings this week? You just didn't show up. So anyway, down to Jarvis. Awesome. New look, new you over there. I'm digging that moose in the background. Or is that a coyote?
Little elk, you mean?
Elk, there it is.
Go with elk. That one's an elk. Yep.
It's a nice wood sculpture. I should have just started with that.
It's a very good wood wall sculpture of an elk.
Yeah. That's all right.
Call it Dallas moose.
You got kiddos too. You know how spring forward really affects the sleeping schedules. So I don't have to. While Brian's missing meetings, you and I are reminiscing over here of keeping our kids on straight. Well, fellas, we got a lot to talk about today. Some big news has dropped, and we got to get out of the way to make sure that this is discussed and shared. So very excited to hop into it here. Topics for today. We got some Adam news. Man, very cryptic. What is that going to be, Mr. Adam? I'm going to give it over to you. Takeaways, and then. Last week we had a really interesting, I'm going to call it record-breaking webinar. Didn't expect it. All about pre-con with some partners in the software space, and man, just plenty to talk about there. Mr. Viz was instrumental in setting that up and making it happen. So we're going to talk about pre-con a little bit, and I think that's going to be a really fun discussion. But Mr. Adam, what's the news? Very curious to know, and I'm going to hand the mic over to you, my friend.
Yeah. Well, the big news, it is with mixed emotions, very bittersweet, that I am leaving the drone deploy team, and thus the built different crew in the many capacities that we fill here. So, I'm rocking the old school, the very, very, very old school.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably had to dig that out of a pretty deep bucket there.
I wear it pretty often, actually, so it's not too far off. But for this particular discussion, I had to break it out because this T-shirt I got 4 years ago in April from Construction Site when I left the industry and came to work in the reality capture construction tech space, and so I figured it was fitting for today. But yes, I'm leaving, headed back to industry. Actually, going back to the as I've been told by many of my old and now new coworkers, and coming back home to Turner Construction in a very different capacity. From what my resume has, headed back in a more business development capacity, and I think I can attribute a lot of kind of my current mindset to working on the marketing department here at Drone Deploy, and past experience on the go-to-market team with Construction Site. So just a lot of good relationship building and networking, and trying to further the Turner dream.
I think what I really heard you say is you were inspired by Jarvis's journey of going to and from. And last week you said, "Hey, I'm out. I want to do what that man did." I mean, just interpreting.
That's really the truth. Yeah. Jarvis really inspired my move, and so I'm just taking what I heard from him, and I'm really implementing it, putting it into action.
We'll see you back on this side in about 2 years, then.
You both matching has been really helping the transition for me emotionally. You've both been wearing like the same type of clothes repeatedly, so I think that's great. I remember that T-shirt. We had to custom make an extra medium for you, Adam. I remember that.
I think they call them mediums, not extra mediums.
Come on, guys. This one's nice and loose, dude. Yeah. I was way fatter when I left construction. So
I was gonna say, look at all the weight you lost. Is that the stress weight that now we're walking back into, or?
It's funny, man. The lifestyle discussion is definitely a big one. And what's interesting or very cool about the role that I'll be going into is that it is in a new market, and I'll be kind of the first full-time employee in that market. And so this sort of big corporate company, typical stereotypical deal there is like going to be kind of cool in that I'll be the only one. I don't really have an office to report to. It's sort of still a work from home position, even though it's not work from home on the paper, right? It's not a remote work job. So I do get to sort of dictate some of my schedule, still get to, enjoy some of the free time and the hobbies that I've built. And, you guys heard me, the irony of I don't know how many weeks ago it was, probably 3 weeks ago. Now, Brian, Grant, and I were talking about our journeys and our past and all those things. I think one of the big takeaways, or I should say one of the big points I very diligently tried to make in that was, for anyone in the industry setting boundaries. I am going back into industry right now with a renewed mindset and just kind of very different mental health, very different, perspective on life, and kind of how much I, obviously putting in a bunch of effort and changing the way I work, but still maintaining those personal hours, maintaining the hobbies, those sorts of things. So definitely quality of life will be top of mind.
You just watch out for the site trailer Rice Krispie treats. Those got me every time.
Yeah, dude, those are tough. Those are definitely tough.
Yeah, man. In all seriousness, man, it's you're worth being celebrated. It's so fun to. I think all of us have had the opportunity. Brian, probably the longest here, right? I mean, Brian, you're OG with Adam from way back in the day in your Schmiedium instruction sites, which say that 5 times fast of t-shirts.
Yeah, no, we go way back, and honestly, there's a lot of stories I probably couldn't say on the air, and then there's a ton of other great ones too that we could talk. I think more than anything, Adam, it's always been great that you just always brought the mentality of the field to the tech company, and I think that's having an advocate within a company to just like bring up the topics like, hey, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Like sometimes it's the basic app working on mobile that we need to focus on, not a new AI product. So always applaud you for that.
I think when I think of
thanks,
you,
man.
Adam, it's pretty interesting to see the tour of duty that you've had. I mean, even across 2 different companies, and I'm not going to put it in a Jarvis stratosphere over here, but I mean, it is crazy to think the roles that you've taken on, and then the companies. Obviously getting the news that you guys were getting acquired, and then coming over and continuing that route, and then transitioning teams, and then this little thing called community that you and I were building over this last 18 months has been fun to think about and look back and see the impact that you've had. So yeah, man, I just think the tour of duty was strong, and now coming back home to a familiar face is going to be exciting. And yeah, it's transitions are always challenging, but they're always, I think, also bring just a really fun excitement, because I think it just opens up new opportunities, new relationships, all the things I feel like we talked about last week with Jarvis, and just how his story has led him to where he's been, but yet the people along the way have always kind of stayed there with him.
Yeah, man, the tour of duty, I think, is a good point to maybe camp on a little bit, just in terms of, I've said to a lot of people lately, I feel like I've kind of gotten the PhD in startup land and in construction tech startup in a very quick fashion. Started on the go-to-market team, a solutions engineer, had a short stint as an account executive in kind of, a true sales capacity. Figured out, knew before I started that true software sales wasn't my jam, but did it to help the team fill the hole, and was rather successful at it. Move from that to, Brianna Williams, our head of product, will tell you how vocal I was as a customer of Instruction Site, as well as now an internal employee who got to see behind the curtain. And with a big giant ego that was hangover from construction, I said, hey, put me on that product team. I could probably do it better than the rest of you. And I was quickly humbled, because product development is a whole nother business, a whole nother beast. And but I learned a ton, and it really, honestly, those 2 stints in go-to-market as well as in product really informed me, and kind of out of those 2 sort of stops along the way, really highlighted the fact that we do tend to talk to the same folks in the industry. And as a company that's trying to develop tools for the field, I found a hole there, and that's where you alluded to it, Grant. You and I kind of started this community piece, and really trying to reach the field, really trying to reach the end users of our product. And so jumping over to the marketing team, I've learned more about marketing in a SaaS capacity than I ever thought I needed to know or wanted to know. So really go to market, product, marketing. It's been a pretty cool. I think the only thing, Brian, you said the other day, the only thing I haven't done is work in a real support capacity, which, officially,
I've seen you be a support on jobs. You're getting that badge of honor in my book.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Let's. I don't want to get too far ahead of us here, but kind of what we wanted to talk about next was just takeaways. I mean, we could camp here for a while, but I think it is interesting. I mean, yeah, you summarized it well there. It's like 4 years, probably 6, 7 teams along the way. A lot of faces, names, experiences, things that you've kind of gotten to, yeah, just kind of learn from. And I guess Jarvis, you had a pretty good question as we were talking about this pre-show. But yeah, I'll kind of have you lead the way of just having been there, and now you're kind of seeing Adam transition in some ways here too. But yeah, just Adam, I think we wanted to kind of talk about just some of your big takeaways of what's kind of stood out and some things that you'll be taking back with you.
Yeah, I think one of the main questions, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is that work-life balance, that mental health kind of aspect that the tech side of things have really kind of taken a hold of and said, if you need time, take time. That's a huge, not detriment, but it's a huge hurdle in the construction industry. I remember, that on a previous podcast, you said you might have 10 things on your to-do list. You might do 9 of them, but 9 more things are going to pop at the end of it. So the to-do list never gets shorter. So since you're starting kind of a new business unit for Turner, how are you going to instill that in the project teams and in the folks that you guys hire as you build that group?
Yeah, it's a great question and fantastic point. The short answer is that, as in my capacity, I'll be what, we're kind of referring to or talking about as a doer seller, where, my goal is to, procure the work, win the work, and then staff it, ultimately end up being sort of kind of a principal in charge, if you will, of projects in the beginning. So I'll have that influence on on an operations team that's going to execute the job. And yeah, the short answer is impressing that upon that team, making sure that they understand that, hey, the job will be here tomorrow, right? The project will never go away. We can't afford this project team around you, and the business behind you will survive if you take this 4-hour afternoon to go get your teeth cleaned at the dentist, right? To go spend the time with your kid's soccer team or whatever that is. Leave at 4 p.m. to get to happy hour with the boys from college or whatever that is, right? That is probably the biggest takeaway. That and one thing that I will say, and again, not just because I'm going back to work there, but I would have said this, or any point over the last 4 years too. Turner, in a lot of ways, did encourage those things when I worked there the first time. It was my mentality and my vision of sort of like the grind and the drive and be very successful and be the most intelligent, most informed or one on the project team. It was really my standards that I kind of set that kept me from fully embracing that work-life balance the way that I should have in the first go around. So I want to make sure that, especially for younger staff, you're here to work, right? You're here to prove yourself. You're here to, build a good resume, build good projects, be a very successful team member. But at the same time, you can only do those things if you are taking some time for yourself, if you are getting your outside of work stuff done too. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, and what I'll impress on, anybody that I work with in the future.
Adam, I'm curious. You know me pretty well. You've gotten to work with me pretty close the last handful of months and probably a year plus now. To know that, like, hey, what I get excited about is what I probably really start to spend a lot of time on, and it's hard to put boundaries around things that excite us. I think because they feel like, oh well, you're feeling a purpose and you're feeling a need, and I'm curious of like, do you think those boundaries will come naturally like now this time, or do you think that, because obviously any new move and new opportunity is exciting, and so I think that like almost lessens the awareness of what boundaries could be, and so yeah, just curious of like, do you think the excitement will kind of be seen through the filter of like, hey, I know I need to put some boundaries here of what that might look like, because obviously things are going to take off, your success and pedigree speaks for itself. And, I think oftentimes you look backwards and you're like, oh, why did I not put boundaries up? Because the excitement just kind of outweighs some things.
Yeah. It's definitely, I don't think it's going to come as naturally as I think. I like to look at the last 4 years of just unbounded, traveling around in a van, living in South Lake Tahoe, skiing, all of the stuff that I've done on the side. I like to think that those things are going to stay super present, and I'm going to stay in this mentality. But I know me, and that I'm a bit type A. I'm a bit driven, and I know that I'm going to jump in with both feet. So I think it's going to be, a system of checks and balances, lots of calendar holds where I need to put those just to keep me between the rails, put up some bumpers. But I will say too that, I've grown personally, over the last 4 years that I think I have really sort of ingrained in myself some of that stuff. So I think a little bit will come naturally. I've told a lot of people too in the past that, recently I should say, that my life pendulum has swung pretty drastically from, red line pinned over here on one side of, stress and hard work, lots of hours in my previous chapter. It has swung almost completely to the other side where, and again, very thankful for the opportunity to be in a position of remote work, far less stress in this industry, far less stress in the roles that I've held here. So I've been able to swing that pendulum all the way to the other end. I do also realize that where I'm at currently it's not sustainable. It's not, a long term role for me personally. And so letting that pendulum kind of come back to some form of equilibrium here is kind of what I'm headed towards. So, I'm real optimistic. I am very excited. There are a lot of wheels already turning. I haven't actually started the job yet, but I've got a lot of plans and lots of strategy going on in my head. And so definitely anxious to get started. But we'll do a follow-up episode in about 6 months, and we'll see how much hair I have at that point and let you know how I'm doing.
I mean, let's see if the shirt really does fit and how much more gray hair. I'm expecting a goatee to match Jarvis, same colored shirt, the whole nine. But yeah,
the
Brian,
shirt size plans to stay the same, and the facial hair is.
I mean, you say that now. We have a timestamp here, so
it's not the Yankees as much as I will equate it to the Yankees. There is no facial hair requirement, so
that changed this year, by the way. Don't test my sports knowledge. It did change this year.
Great call.
So,
great call.
Just firing it off there. Brian, what do you got?
No, it's interesting to see, like, I would love to hear a specific thing that you're like, all right, I really want to make sure I bring this back. And it could be something in the tech stack. It could just be like, hey, let's implement Slack on job sites. Or I want to think about maybe even just on the pre-construction planning side, how you're going to sell the project, stuff like some very concrete that you're like, all right, this is a non-negotiable. I want to make sure we do this.
I can't wait to hear this answer, especially the Slack.
Yeah,
one.
I was just gonna say, Grant knows my love-hate relationship with
Cheers
Slack.
to that, baby. I do love me
dude.
some Slack, and I
Our
bummed
fearless our fearless podcast host moderator here is in my opinion the number one channel creator in the org. And man, if I spent the number of hours on Slack to keep
Did you not see my plaque on the wall
I'd be-
back here? I mean, it's
you got an award already? Okay,
the
good.
most collaborative on Slack. So I mean, hey, that's all right. Loud and proud.
Brian, the answer to your question in regards to Slack, I am going back to a very established corporation that has lots of IT in place already, and I don't think that I will be instrumental in implementing Slack.
Which
Not
is a
that I
long
really
answer
want to
for
anyway.
no, he will not have Slack, by the way.
Negative on the Slack. What I am very much concrete examples of what I am very much excited to take back with me, though. You kind of touched on, well, one of them, maybe this is freshly poured, not quite cured concrete, but one of them is just a mentality around innovation and continuous improvement, right? Like that is a number one thing where, I don't care if you're the intern, wet behind the ears, first job site, literally first day on the first job site, you are empowered to think creatively about a problem that you see. And in fact, those individuals are probably in the best position to really point out any flaws, right? Because, you're coming in fresh with no preconceived notions of how we do it or the way it should be done. That there's a really good opportunity to empower those individuals to say, hey, here's the way we do stuff. Tell us the way you think it could be done better while you learn and while you get up to speed. So empowering the youngest individuals to say, hey, like, I have a good idea. Let's talk about it. On the flip side of that spectrum, the folks that have been in the industry for years and years and years and years and years and have their way of doing things and the way that they've always done it, you know what, you got to break that in some ways. I'm not necessarily advocating for tech in place of just for the sake of having tech, but be open to new ideas, be open to suggestions, be open to creative ways of doing things. That is probably the biggest way that I've expanded my mind, even just in this last 4 years. A much more concrete example will be, yes, on the pre-con side of things, my goal and again, the constraints of the industry will dictate some of the ways that I actually can implement some of these things. But yeah, any opportunity that I find to, bake in some additional budget for tech, additional budget for tools. Let me rephrase that. Bake in additional budget for tools that will make the team more efficient, help us deliver a project in a better way. stretch the bounds, impress an owner with maybe an enhanced deliverable that we can provide to them that does require a little bit more upfront work on our end. But the goal, and Turner's portfolio in general is, we're not a low bid contractor, right? We're a repeat work. We're a reputation based builder. And so, with each project, the goal is to walk away with an owner that is, extremely impressed, wants us on every job, wants to call me on the weekends to go skiing, right? Like, just have that, personal relationship. And I'm proud to say that the projects that I did do in chapter 1 of Turner, the vast majority of those, we walked away with that client being very happy with the end product and the team and relationships intact. So, if tech and tools and additional budget and enablement of the team can lead to those outcomes, 100%, that is the goal. But, approaching it more open-minded than maybe traditionally, let's build in some budget for some tech. Let's build in some budget for some innovation. Let's do some things on the job that, may set us apart. Maybe at the expense of a couple extra bucks.
Do you think that's because of? I'll go for it, Brian.
I was just going to say my follow-up question to that is: so you've also come here and you've worked on creating the superintendent community, right? It's almost could be seen as more of a longer bet, like a longer term bet. You're not there to get people to book demos day one. You're there to connect people, to connect to other people that are sharing the same problems, right?
Yeah.
How are you thinking about community and community building into what you do next? Is something that, yes, topping out ceremonies, groundbreaking ceremonies, like those are all kind of already baked into what's already there, but kind of thinking more holistically about how can we improve the industry from a community aspect?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The focus for the last year has been building community around a persona, superintendents in the industry that are typically not very communal, right? And just by nature, here's your job site, here's your fence. You focus on what's inside that fence for the next, whatever it is, 6 months, 3 years. So to that point, breaking down some of those, the fences that keep us isolated on our projects, I think is one big one. So in the event, or I should say when, not if, when we have multiple projects in my market that, do have their own set of, fences and their own day-to-day, their own schedules, their own problems, their own challenges, taking the time to connect those project teams even just across town is one big piece, more of an internal, right, community building piece within the org. One major thing that will be, I'm entering basically a new market that Turner doesn't really have a big presence in currently. So one thing that will be very high on my list of kind of strategic, entrances to this market is building a community, right? Very similar to what we've done with Scoop. And that community is going to span everywhere from, owners, individuals that, in the community, in the city that are, in a position to potentially build something in the future, all the way through, other general contractors in the community that are already there. There's opportunities for joint ventures. There's opportunities to work collaboratively. We're in a very interesting industry these days where, we've seen, and we've even talked about, a lot of these big projects are JVing. And there's a lot of opportunity to, really be collaborative in that capacity as well. And then at the subcontractor trade partner level, right, making sure that, when the new guy with the Turner logo comes into town on my shirt, that, it's not seen as a, I'm coming in to change things necessarily. Coming in to be a part of the community really is the goal. And so winning some of the subcontractors approval, there's a very good trade partner base in town. And so, making sure that they understand who I am, what our goals are, and how we operate as a business is very important in that community building piece too. So, there's a bunch of different ways that I'm approaching it with the community piece on my resume and how to apply that. From each of these stops on the tour of duty so far, right, I've taken away bits and pieces of each of these things to, really apply to my next role moving forward.
Adam, I'm curious. A lot can change in 4 years at a company, and then oftentimes it won't, or not a lot has changed. I'm curious, what was the Turner you left, and what is the Turner you see now? In 4 years, I think you've done a good job of just talking about, hey, kind of your approach in that team and what you're going to be doing to kind of set up yourself. But yeah, what have you noticed from their team that wasn't maybe there 4 years ago, or is there now that obviously you've gotten to work with them still being on this side of it too. But yeah, just curious of what you left versus what you think you're going back to.
Yeah. I think, again, that's probably a great topic for a follow-up, a see you guys in a few months type thing, to really get the gist dialed once I'm in the day-to-day. But what I do know currently is that, I think a lot of companies in the construction industry they've been kind of, I don't want to say forced, but in the environment, say post-COVID, right? A lot of and influence from our industry in the tech space, where folks like us are working 100% remote, we're traveling, we're home with our kids, whatever the situation is for each individual. There's been sort of a precedent set that employees, and especially new ones in the industry today, require a bit more flexibility, right? Remote work, those sorts of things. So I have seen, and from the sidelines, I've watched some of my old friends at Turner be afforded more opportunities for some of those things that we were talking about before with the work-life balance, right? From a corporate perspective, right? There's opportunities to work from home a couple days a week. There's, there are more outings as a company that, facilitate some of that outside of the job site. And so I've seen from the sidelines, again, Turner adapt to a lot of those changes and offer a lot more to their employees. So that's a great thing. Traditionally, Turner, if you go back through the resume of Turner Construction Projects, there's not a ton of JVs on that roster. Obviously, we know it's a massive company. There's plenty of capacity there. They can take on pretty much any job as a single entity. But I think over the last few years, there's been a shift in the industry to want to be more collaborative, especially in what I was talking about before, about owner relations and making sure that we the company is seen as a team player. One thing that was starting to bud when I was just leaving was the emphasis on contracting way more to small businesses in terms of our trade partners, right? Really trying to enter, whether established in a market or going into a new one, trying to bring up the smaller businesses into kind of the next level of the market, right? Whether that be a mid-sized contractor, mid-sized trade partner, up into the big leagues, top of industry style, or if it was like, hey, brand new small operation that we just really want to enable to take on maybe something a little bit bigger, more complex. And so I think that there's been a lot more emphasis on that in the last few years, really, to Brian's point about community, going into a community to build a building, but also improving the community around us, right? Like leaving it better than we found it is a kind of a pillar or a mentality that I've seen be stronger over the last few years. So I'm looking forward to more of that too.
Yeah, great stuff. Did I hear that you're inviting yourself back? It's kind of strange, but I mean, I guess that's cool. So, yeah.
I did just assume that the door would be open for me to just kind of come back and pop in on the pod anytime I wanted to. So
I mean, we do have a pretty stringent featured guest requirement list, and I mean, here we are with Jarvis that it might be even more stringent. So I'm not going to say goatees are required, different fitting shirts, all those things. So we'll see.
The recurring themes just keep coming back. Yeah,
we'll
I
see.
do. I have told. I mean, to your very joking point there, Grant. I have very seriously told everyone on the Drone Deploy team that and honestly, a lot of the contacts that I've made in the industry too. Like my phone number's staying the same. I'm not going to announce it on the podcast, but if you already have it, feel free to use it. I do very much want to. I've had various conversations where I've had to, kind of I have a good routine in this speech now. I'm leaving 100% based on the opportunity that's been presented to me at Turner, and 0% of my decision to leave has been anything to do with, a dissatisfaction at Drone Deploy or, any form of like friction here. And in fact, I'm leaving at a time where, Grant, you and I have talked about this. We're starting to feel a really cool momentum and synergy amongst our community efforts. And, we're really on the doorstep of something pretty cool, I think. And so it's made this decision to leave Drone Deploy is almost tougher than my original decision to leave Turner after 13 years, right? So in a lot of ways, I want to stay connected at Drone Deploy with the way our product direction is headed, the roadmap, strategies around marketing, right? Like how do we present ads to the industry that will resonate with folks that we can really tell them and show them how that drone deploy would be a tool for them on their job. So by no means am I leaving, and by no means should drone deploy or anyone at drone deploy think that I won't be roaming the virtual halls of the organization still.
Well, I just have to find a way to explain to my son that Monster Truck Adam won't be coming around the office and shed as much anymore. So
now you got to pull the plug on the heartstrings a little bit there, bud.
I mean, I've had a week or two to prep that one, So
don't leverage him. Don't leverage him like that. That's terrible.
I know, right?
No, it is
heartless.
Not heartless. It is fun, man. It is cool to have just integrated you into so many. I mean, we talk about work a lot on here, but yeah, man, it's been awesome to have you just meet more of the personal sides of each of our lives, and not that it's. I've learned that the last impression is almost more important than the first impression, and I've definitely taken some masterclass notes of how you transition, not only with me and our team of what we're trying to do, but also the broader team too. And now I guess I have to learn that from Jarvis, who has seen that and will give me now some good points to how that plays out. But no, man,
don't hesitate, Jarvis. He can take it. He can take it.
There it is. There it is.
Well, my first impression of you, Adam, is the last impression of you. I also don't have your phone number. I don't know these stories about Monster Truck Adam. I'm feeling pretty shafted here, guys.
Well, hey, just well, he just said, hey, if you have my number, you have it, and if you don't, come
if you
find
don't,
me, so.
Too bad.
Jarvis, what was your first time meeting Adam? Wasn't it at the deploy day?
Yeah, it was a deploy day 2 weeks ago in Dallas.
Just let that sink
I didn't
in,
know
brother.
who Adam was, and I was out there greeting people. I said, "You here for the drone deploy day?" He said, "I am the drone deploy day."
That's a slight exaggeration, but
it is a total exaggeration.
No, it's a high and by. I get it, but no, man. In all seriousness, it is fun. We'll see if we bring you back as a featured guest. I don't know. Our list and program slots are filling up. Jarvis has already let, I think, 7 or 8 featured guests come onto the time slot. So we'll see if we can fit you in. I guess is what I'm saying.
All right, I appreciate any concessions you guys can make to slot.
But it does come with Turner swag. I need a hat. I need some polos. I'm looking for some stadium tours. I know you're going to be doing that. So it's just it comes with some
swag's a pretty low bar. I thought you were going to say some enterprise deal on my first project, and
hey man, I'm not in sales, so
$100,000 additional ARR or anything of those lines.
I'll take a t-shirt. I'm a pretty low frills guy. No high requirements there. Yeah.
Swag it is.
All right, so your 100-day plan when you get back into office, we'll see what I guess I need to put a calendar invite on for how that 100-day plan came out. So
I like that. Yeah, that's good. We could throw a 100-day mark on the calendar. I think 100 days is I think 100 days is a good just over 3 months is going to be a good benchmark to see just a lot of the things you guys have already asked about. Where am I on the mental health spectrum? Where am I? When was the last time I worked out? What's the last day I got to go skiing? That kind of thing.
Well, let's just say if we don't get in touch with you, we'll know the answer to that.
Yeah, sorry guys, can't fit you into my calendar to get on the thing.
Yeah,
no, in all seriousness, man, I am definitely targeting that kind of 100 days as a good benchmark, a good check-in point. There's going to be a ton of learning, obviously. You guys have all. Jarvis has worked everywhere, I think, as we talked about last week. And I think each Brian and Grant, you guys have made your different transitions through your careers. The first 90 days is like just getting your feet wet, just figuring out what day-to-day looks like and kind of what the role entails. So, man, I'm happy and excited to report back at that point. My goal is really just get out in the community, Brian, to your point, like get out in the community, demonstrate very outwardly and very honestly that I'm here to make an impact and a good one, a positive one, and just kind of see where that takes us. My previous stint in sales has very, very short. I guess I've had 2 stints in sales in my life so far. My very first job, I sold shoes for Big Five, and that may be a good call out to get them to sponsor us. I don't know
Big
if they're still around, but
what is Big Five?
Big Five Sporting Goods. Come on, dude. Big Five Sporting Goods. You don't have that down in Texas?
No, we're a Shields baby all day.
I do love Shields, but Big Five is just not on the same level. Brian, do you have Big Five out east?
No, we're in Civilization. We have just normal Monkey and stuff like that.
Jeez Louise, there it is. I saw Jarvis. You nodded your head.
Five.
Big Five?
Yeah, Big Five in Pahrump, Nevada, man.
Yeah, dude. Big
Oh
fat
my
perump.
gosh.
Oh, we need to talk about perump
Yeah.
on an off air.
Exactly.
But anyway, so the point is, I sold shoes in my first job, which was pretty dumb. I didn't like doing it. It was terrible. I knew it. Job number one, sales wasn't my thing. Come fast forward to however many years later, first role at Struction Site was in the sales department. Had a quota, had all those things. Realized again, not a big fan of sales. But what I realized recently is going into what many would call sort of a sales capacity in my next role. What I was selling in kind of the first two stints were more kind of commodities, right? Like selling shoes. Here's the shoes. The old sell me a pen type, exercise applies in all of these cases. By the way, in software, I'm selling a software solution to help you on your project. The way I'm approaching the next is selling really a relationship and understanding like a partnership rather than I think I said it last week is we're in the people business. We just happen to build buildings too. And so taking that very, very front forward facing, top of mind, keeping that top of mind, I should say, is, just going out to build relationships. And maybe there's a building or two along the way.
Were you just tearing up, Grant?
I wasn't. No, that was not me rubbing my eyes. I just know that when I reach out to him on Slack anymore, it's going to say deactivated. So now I guess I really do have to send the text message. But
not much is going to change. I don't think he responds much anyways. Just fires Slacks at Adam.
I mean,
too many channels. Too many channels.
That's all right. And then I'll follow it up with a picture of my son holding a monster truck saying, "When's Adam coming back?" And that's all right.
You know what the biggest thing, you guys will appreciate this. The biggest thing right now that I'm concerned about leaving Drone Deploy and going to back into industry is I got to go back to freaking Windows, man. I came into Struction Site being like my whole life has been Windows based, and I fought kicking and screaming when they were like, "We're taking away your whatever it was, the Dell laptop, and giving you this MacBook," and I was like, "Ugh, like I don't like it. I'm not into it." My life has completely changed in the last 3.5 years on the MacBook, and now I got to go back to a damn Windows platform. I'm not stoked about it.
Well,
I'm 6 months into that transition. I'm still holding on to the Windows thing. Like, but
tell you what,
good to know
Jarvis,
that it does win you over.
let it in, man. Let it in. It's productivity goes up. The ease of use. I mean, you're already an iPhone guy. It's really not much of a stretch, right? It's the same stuff, but just on the laptop. Let it in, and soak it up. But yeah, it was part of my negotiations. It was actually a point I made to the GM. I was like, all right, I'll come over if you give me a MacBook. And he's like, Turner's got some IT standards. I don't think we can do that. I was like, damn it. So,
hey, I mean, 100-day plan. If it's in there, I'm going to be seeing some blue bubbles when you respond rather than green ones. So I get
well,
it.
the iPhone is sticking around.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. What did you say, Brian?
No, I was gonna say something stupid anyways.
I mean, I'm over here talking about. That was not what I was expecting you were going to say about the saddest part of you leaving. But here we are talking about laptops and not the people. So
it's gonna be a big adjustment for me. So anyway,
people business.
I don't know.
He talks about the laptops.
The saddest thing about me leaving is this MacBook that I got right over here on my desk. Let me tell you about it. I am going to cry myself to sleep, but I don't have it anymore. But it's, the people were great here. They were great.
The people are so great, but this MacBook, man, I'm going to miss it.
I just envision you sleeping with it on your side next to you. Like, no, don't leave me.
No, this quickly has degraded. So,
Love it.
I will wrap us up on this topic and just say, man, I am genuinely going to miss you guys, and look forward to keeping in touch on all things Drone Deploy and podcasts and Built Different and everything. So, Jarvis, I'll text you my number. I'll Slack you my number, and you can jump in on that.
You better hold me to it because in probably 4 hours here it's deactivated. So
right.
Man, it's awesome. Adam, you'll be missed, man, but it is fun to celebrate some stuff before you go. And transitions are always different, but on the backside, they're always fun because you get to celebrate some new opportunities. And man, it's been a good run. So just even thanks for inviting us into the journey, a part of it. Sometimes I know folks, when they transition, it's either pretty quiet or pretty reserved until call it that 100-day plan comes back out. And I don't know, it that has stuck with me as I've made a transition of like how you leave is almost more impactful than how you came. So it's it's been encouraging to watch you do that well and lead and serve others well, kind of as a part of it too. So I'm not grabbing my tissue
Thanks, bud.
box, so we're going to move to the next topic here. And yeah, what's interesting is, it's funny. We had this webinar last week, and Brian, you were kind of the brainchild behind this. I mean, webinars are kind of what you make of them, I guess. Good ways to. We talked about community on here. Stay connected. It's just a way to connect with folks in kind of the day-to-day stuff virtually, and good presentations, good speakers, good topics. But man, I feel like webinars have kind of, I don't know, not died off, but maybe have had a less of an impact over the years. And man, this one that Brian, you guys hosted last week, something felt different. And I mean, we got a lot of love from a lot of people who were on the webinar, which was fascinating. But sorry, this topic of precon, it was about precon. And I don't know, I guess I'm curious, we can open this up of just the power of precon. I don't know if it's just like the super interesting community of folks that obviously care to set jobs up right, use the best tools to go win work, use the best tools to, schedule and logistics, what the job's going to, I don't know. I was just kind of blown away. I was like, holy cow. I think we had like 500 people register for the event. Just a ton of folks that were actually there in person, which, is always interesting too. You can go back and watch the recording, but yeah, Brian, I'll kick it over to you because, this was your kind of brainchild with precon, and man, huge success. So I felt like it was interesting to at least talk about for a little bit of just what is it? Like, what is the power of precon, at least from maybe a communal standpoint, but obviously we can talk about the nuts and bolts of, what it was and what your kind of takeaways from it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have this big initiative on pre-construction right now, mostly because, the biggest hurdle we see is teams are like, oh, I would have loved to have had this earlier on in the project. Now that everyone's running around, like, it's going to be way too tough to bring this on, right? Not just from like an implementation standpoint, but just sometimes for a budget. There's just so many other pressing topics, and talking to an owner and asking for maybe a little more money in an OAC during things already being kicked off, it's just not the right time, and people don't feel as inspired to do it then, but they would have done it if it were earlier. So great. And I know we wanted to do a webinar, but we are like, okay, great. How can we flip this on its head? Because the word webinar sucks, to be frank. Like, it's most of the time, and I did like a deep dive analysis. I went through a ton of webinars in the space. I was like, why do these just not seem as interesting, right? And I realized it's because it's very self-serving, and a lot of them have to do with things that you could find out on your own, right? So one of the criteria was, hey, where could we find a much deeper niche, get very specific on one specific thing, and maybe an integration between using two different products, right? So CM Builder and Drone Deploy.
Yeah, let
and
me pull this up while you're kind of talking over this, because this is what eventually came of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So criteria number one was, like, let's talk about a topic that would be very difficult for someone to just figure out on their own. Everybody on this panel had product one, product two, and was like, had a problem that they had to face and where they had to use both, right? So it was problem driven. It wasn't like, I'm not just like using drone maps and bringing it into like some other random product for no other reason other than to like show it on iPad, right? Like, they had a very specific problem and they had to integrate with some design teams, some stakeholders, right? So it was like, great. Criteria number one, get super niche on the problem. People who are going to show up are going to care about that problem, and not just, hey, come listen to us tell you about our product. That you could have gone to our website, you could have gone to YouTube, you could have gone to your friends to find out. Great. So that was criteria number one. Number two was, we carefully selected the speakers. So we had a good mix of different project sizes in different regions. So obviously PCL, Juno, and Cast, those speakers are all very carefully curated to also be interesting, right? We're not just like choosing people that want to pay us the most money, or it was only driven strictly on vibes. And have they shown a proficient use of this product that you would be very difficult to find on your own? I wanted it to feel almost like you have you just joined a company and your director is showing you something that they do that you've never seen before at your own company. And that was kind of the feel. And then mix it with you and Javier, like, you just couldn't fail. And I had a lot of expectations for where it was going to go, but the feedback was beyond anything we could have imagined. People were saying like this was the best webinar I've ever been on. The amount of like practical like things I could take right away and use today was like the biggest thing for me. Um, so yeah, I mean, great job, obviously you and Javier, and you guys did a lot of even just like there's a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. Like there were rehearsals, there was multiple emails of like, okay, what topic are you talking about? Because we want to make sure there's a little bit of a mix, right? One was a hospital project, one was a complete ground up um, project in Sarasota, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah,
that's
I
my
think it
five.
was
Vibes were high.
vibes were high. Yeah, it was. I mean, I think you started and shouted out well. I mean, between Jody, Amir, and Wilson, like great speakers. That's a huge must. And it's funny between Javier and myself. Javier being on the CM Builder side, like we're like, all right, how do we shrink our section truly as like quick as possible to get to the people that provide the most value, right? Like, and that feels weird because I know I got a lot of eyes and ears from our team on it of like, well, you didn't really even show our product. And it's like, well, I don't want to show our product. I want these guys to show our, like, I don't have to be the one that talks about it. If they're the ones that are showing the real value. So it really is. And I think you said it well, like the term webinar obviously has a lot of connotations to it, whether it's like, all right, I got to go there for continuing education, or, hey, I'm just curious about stuff. And then you end it and you're like, well, I could have learned this on a website or a chat GPT search on my own. But what you couldn't get out of it is like the interaction with these panelists, which was awesome. The questions that you can get answers to in real time, which was awesome. And then also just like very, I would say candidness, like there's a couple things I remember, just some real good tweetable truths in there of like, hey, like this helped us win work. Like, let's just be really honest. Like we got debriefed in an interview and the owner said like, hey, you guys won this job because of these workflows. And I just think, those kind of things are super powerful when you can sit and, and that's even like a more honest level than even like go to a conference, right? And like, you got to be careful about what you say or maybe, how you present it. And man, there was just an honesty to this group that I was like, this is fire. Like there's some great stuff. And don't take our word for it. I mean, Brian, you shared some of the, notes from the Q&A and chat section of the webinar. And it's like, yeah, best thing I've seen. And, just like, hey, send me the recording. I want to get 4 or 5 other people to, it was just fascinating and definitely unexpected. And yeah, I just appreciate your kind of vision of what you wanted to see this to be, and obviously making the most value for the end users that were attending.
And I think something that you specifically talked about was the feedback. I think people think about the measurement of why they're doing a webinar almost completely wrong. It should be more focused on, do we have the same people coming back, and less focused on how many demos did we book from this? Because yes, a lot of people may not be ready to buy, but they are learning something new. And when the situation arises, they will figure out the time. Right. And I think like, oh, great. Now I'm going into a pursuit 3 months from now. I remember I saw that thing and it was impactful and I felt great about the outcome. Now I'm going to use it. So the measurement should be, do people want to come back and listen to you? If you see your webinar like rates start dropping off over time, probably should change something. You're probably doing it too self-serving and not enough for what the actual person on the other side wants to see.
Yeah, and I
I
think
had a couple points, couple thoughts on this too. I told you guys pre-show. I got outreach from 2 of the superintendent community members, again, superintendents who were on this webinar and gave me feedback that was like, dude, this is awesome. Didn't even know this was possible in terms of, what they are already fans of in Drone Deploy and how they integrate that with CM Builder. And obviously with CM Builder's product, they're tailored directly to the site logistics in the field and that stuff. So hearing it from those guys about like at the field level, they're like, dude, this is amazing. Didn't even know this was possible. It got me thinking, and I was like, I'm going to go look at our integrations page. CM Builder, by the way, hey, marketing department, CM Builder's integration is not listed on our website. We should probably go change that. But 2, I think that another thing that tends to happen, at least a lot of the webinars that I've seen in the past in the construction tech space, is that we tend to focus on our integrations with like the big players, right? The Procores, the Autodesks, the like how you integrate into your project management solution overall. And I think it probably is a good refresh, or what may be also interesting about this one and why we're seeing such good engagement is that it's to sort of quote unquote startup tech partners that are integrating and partnering to produce a very valuable deliverable for the industry as well. And I think that it kind of speaks to that whole, there's definitely competition in the industry, but also we should all stand back and say a rising tide raises all ships. And so what can we do better together as individual, construction tech solutions, maybe some call them point solutions, whatever you want to call it. How can we integrate? How can we partner to deliver an even more valuable product or deliverable for the industry? So I think this was a super, an amazing example of that as well.
Even the topic, I mean, Jarvis, you just did a presentation last week, right? To an entire team of pre-con, and I think you got another one coming up. Like that was a new thing that we started doing. We just on a whim, I was like, hey, like here's some slides, like do with them as you will. And you were like, great, give me a couple days. And like you had things on the books ready to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because these are customers that have been with us for a long time, but have never thought, man, I need to move this over into the RFP, RFQ phase of work. And man, we could really push this with CM Builder and logistics planning. We could use this in, our trade partner communications pre-bid. We can do some bid validation, like nothing that they'd ever thought of, because I think we've marketed really well and saturated ourselves as a company into the ops side of stuff. So it's been really fun over the last, 3-4 months with this pre-con campaign that Brian's put together to kind of broaden the net, even with existing customers. I mean, there's no, increase in ARR for a lot of the enterprise folks, but just to see wider usage, which then hopefully will just build out a wider usage in the ops side of it as well. So,
Yeah, I was shocked of the, Brian, me, I love to get into the data side of it, of like the titles of the 500 plus folks that registered. I mean, pretty shocking, right? Like, I think Adam, you said it, of like who registers for these and if it's on demand or if they, actually do come in person to ask questions. But I mean, it was a pretty healthy split of, pre-con folks, right? So pre-con titles of, folks that were obviously curious and interested, but also like a really good mix of people from the field. Very shocking because, again, you mentioned, Adam, like that time's so valuable. When the webinar is, if they do go and watch it on demand, that was fascinating. But yeah, I just think there's definitely a chord strung on this one of either just interest or topic or a new approach to some of the ways that, we communicate out some of this stuff. I wanted to kind of highlight a little bit of, what happens afterwards, because, pretty typical attendance rate for a webinar is, I think, 30 to 40%, which we were well above that, which again is also exciting to see too. But you talk about on demand after, and it's like, oh, it's going to get lost in an email. It's going to get lost in a, hey, go click on this recording if you want to go watch it. And kudos to, I think, our team to help kind of facilitate where this stuff lives after. This insider platform that we've built over time has just been, I mean, this looks like Netflix, right? Like this looks like the ability to just go through and kind of binge on, stories and folks that are champions or playbooks or guides, and going back and watching previous things. Like, Adam, I think about, your crew of folks of like, man, if they land on this, it's pretty easy to see, okay, hey, this is what I'm interested in. This is where I want to go spend some time and tune in and listen to. I mean, these site visit videos, Brian, this was, again, another Brian brainchild of, how do we capture these stories of what's going on out in the field, and how do we listen to some of these individuals that, want to spotlight themselves and their teams, whether it is pre-con or somewhere completely different. It's just been really cool to, again, not look at, I think it was something you said, Brian, like not look at the event specifically, in this case, the webinar, but look at the whole journey of how do you educate, folks within your team. And it is a little bit of the awareness, it's the education, it's the follow-up, it's the like, hey, they go on demand and do their own kind of experience. And I don't know, it's been fascinating to kind of, I don't know, tailor this information in these resources a little bit better for folks than, again, just an email that gets lost in a, post webinar registration link and things like that. And so, yeah, that part of it, I think, is, again, been really interesting to see. And obviously, I think more engagement probably post event, they'll go onto the insider platform and see some of that stuff too. But yeah, Brian, when you think about, just the topic of pre-con too, like what have you learned about just this segment or part of the life cycle that, as you're engaging in trying to bring more awareness to moving these things up earlier in the life cycle or earlier in the kind of the knowledge of what's possible phase? Anything stand out of why pre-con is so impactful?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about COVID, for example, right? why did we see such a massive spike in reality capture technology during COVID? I really believe it was a catalyst and brought us 4 to 5 years ahead of our time, or where we probably would be right now if COVID did not happen, right? And the sell me this pen analogy, right? Oh, write your name down. I can't. I don't have a pen. Great. Like, you can't do a thing without physically being there. So having the ability to, like, the first example was a hospital renovation project. You can't bring all your trade partners walking through the middle of an active emergency unit just to go look at above ceiling. Like, you need to schedule that. You need to zone off areas. You need to move. Like, there's a huge issue, and just being able to stick a couple 360 cameras above ceiling with a light to communicate that to a mechanical team. Like, how do you do that otherwise, right? Like, how do you do that without this product? And I think that is where we need to stay in the niche of, you are enabling people to do things that they literally cannot do otherwise. It's not like, hey, we're going to make your monthly reports better, but we're going to give you access to the team that's overseas that you're building a data center for.
Brian,
Um,
the other way to approach that hospital is just figure it out as you go. And that, at the end of the day, kind of what I was talking about before, is that ends poorly, right? That burns out your subcontractors. It burns out your relationship with the owner when you're submitting change orders constantly for stuff you didn't know about, right? Like, that's the status quo. Is either we got to shut down, and I would imagine, I don't know who the hospital was or what the circumstance is specifically, but you'd hope for some collaborative upfront, pre-construction discovery work. But if you got to go in there and do it quickly, and you're sketching it out on a piece of paper, you're going to miss something, right? If you're relying on an architect to as-built for you, or there's another one, rely on as-builts from the 70s, whenever that building was originally built, right? You're going to find there's going to be some gotchas along the way. So to your point, I think, do it better, right? Like, you use a tool that really communicates what's going on above ceiling, what's going on in those walls. We'll throw this through an access panel and see what we can get in behind there. So but the point being is, like, figure it out as you go versus, hey, let's put a little bit of upfront work into this. And I heard something a long time ago I used to work in pre-construction as well. And the sentiment that was taught to me when I was very young was, you finish the project the way you started, right? So if our goal is to finish this job strong, you got to set it up for success. You got to start it with some intentionality to say, hey, we're going to crush this project. Let's put the right people on it. Let's put the right tools on it. Let's make sure the money is there in all of the ways that we can control. Like, you got to start a project strong, right? There's no sense in, like, limping in, expecting to just build steam and start and finish strong. Like, good luck, right? Good luck.
Yeah, your schedule blows up. It's a race to the bottom from the beginning. If you don't,
Totally.
If you lose time, or you hit some that you like, some unforeseen. I think the concept of, like, unforeseen, what's it called? Like, yeah,
Conditions.
unseen conditions or unforeseen conditions. Like, how much of that actually could have been prevented in some scenarios? But yeah, a whole nother topic.
Well, let's talk about, like, the approachability of these tools, right? Because I think that, to me, is a little bit of a fascinating topic of, what has really changed in innovation in pre-con over the last 20 years. Well, OST, huge innovation, right? Like, I'm now doing on-screen takeoffs rather than, and I know I'm dating ourselves, fellas, but, like, then you start to think about tools of, I came from a company that was creating Deprofiler, which was like a Google SketchUp estimating tool that changed conceptual estimating for a lot of pre-con teams. And then, but when you think about some of these tools, like, the approachability and the, like, speed to value does take time. Like, you got to ramp yourself up. You got to get training down really well. Bluebeam really even changed the way we did pre-con, right? Like, they have some great takeoff functionality, very approachable. So now we're moving into this, like, great tool, but a little bit more approachable segment. And when you start talking about just walking around with a 360 camera for pre-con, I mean, I can't think of a more approachable speed to value tool out there of getting the most people engaged in the pre-con effort than that. I mean, going in and having one person walk a hospital versus 30 that, is your, pre-con pre-bid meeting. Like, it's just fascinating how the approachability of these tools. And to the CM builder part, I mean, 2 or 3 of those examples, Brian, last week were, logistics plans made from superintendents. Like, let's not overlook the reality of the value that happens. I mean, you're not talking about, experts that have been locked in a room for, 48 hours cranking out these logistics schedules. Like, we're talking about superintendents that can click, get in, see the value, and like want to provide that level of communication, not only to their team, but to the owner, to show that they know the job way better than anyone else, can provide to. And I just think, pre-con's such a fascinating part of the life cycle, to your point, Adam, of like start the job well, end the job well. But we're talking about real dollars and cents here. Like when you're differentiating yourself to go win work with these workflows, I mean, that kind of speaks for itself, right? Like you're starting to really get in here and say like, hey, these were the things and what set you up to differentiate yourself from the competition. Like, I don't know what other level of ROI of winning work that matters in, evaluating these tools.
Grant, like you listed a number of different tools, right? From your past and I should say the industry there. Before you get to the tools, like there's a you have to want to do it, right? You have to want to think. You have to think outside the box to start with, right? You have to say to yourself, is there a better way to do this, to even start engaging with any of those tools? And, I said it earlier in kind of my what am I going to take away and how am I implement some of the learnings into the next chapter. It's like empower every single person on your project to think about things differently. And out of that, you're going to enable a whole bunch of your team to be putting feelers out there, to be joining webinars, to be thinking about things in their day-to-day that they might want to improve, and they'll look for a tool to improve it. Obviously, with big organizations, small organizations, whatever, there's a need to centralize on some stuff, and so there's going to be some proving grounds, and there's going to be a point where, yeah, you know what, we've seen enough value out of this that we're going to go all in, and this is going to become, write it into our SOPs. But you have to enable that sort of grassroots innovation to start within your company to even think about any of those tools. They all started from somebody saying, hey, I got a demo of this one thing, or I downloaded a free trial and it seemed to work pretty well. So that's where I think in the pre-con phase, we get so lost in the direct work line items of the budget that you miss that, like, where can we build in some innovation? Concrete's always going to be concrete. Framing's always going to be framing, right? Market's going to dictate their price. How can we make this better than the next company or the next one down the road? So,
yeah, I totally agree. I was just alluding to like how approachability, is the complete catalyst of the success of these tools. Because there's been many 4D sequencing tools that have come and gone before even at CM Builder. Like it's not the first, and there's been other ways of going out and capturing job site conditions with your phone. It's like, well, then why does that not happen? It's like, well, how do I, organize it? How do I share it with more? So the approachability, I just think is fascinating too, because like I said, you talk about pre-con, you're talking about, multiplying numbers of eyes on these things by 10x, 15, 20x. Like you got to get the system down, and it's got to be approachable for, teams to want to use. So all that to say, fascinating, I think topic of pre-con in general. It's just something that maybe gets overlooked because you're just, grinding and getting in and out of jobs and, wanting to continue to crank them out. And I don't know. It's just interesting when you slow down and really look at this part of the life cycle and the importance that it brings. Well said. Let's finish the same way we started, and let's hopefully start, better than we finished too. And so, yeah, anything else, Brian, there that we didn't hit on?
No, I think just last note is like just constantly be listening to the people. Like, where do you see gaps on where they may be learning about your product and what they want to learn more about, and let that drive it more than anything else.
Yeah, well said. Well, fellas, this has been a good one. Adam, I don't know how to wrap this up, but I guess we'll see you in 100 days is maybe my biggest takeaway, and hopefully you get my text, and two, you may respond to me on Slack that isn't activated. But yeah, man, you'll be missed. It's been fun to celebrate you, and gosh, a season and a half now, or many episodes like these. It'll be fun to have you on as a guest in 100 days, and yeah, we'll be excited to get to catch up with you.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, looking forward to staying in touch and yeah, jumping back on the pod when you guys will have me, and let Henry know that I'll send him some more monster trucks. Don't hate me. Yeah,
the torch is well held, Jarvis, man. We're pumped that even just in the short couple times that we've had you on, it's gonna be fun, man. And the beard lives on. I would argue better in a goatee format, and you have enough of Adam's hobbies in you that I don't want to say are a better an upgrade, but we'll leave that for debate for the audience out there of how that to be. So
Yeah,
I'll do my best.
Adam,
I'll do my best.
Adam, you will be very missed. I'll send you videos of me airdropping stuff just to give you a little.
Just to
I'm
rub
still
it
waiting
in.
for that before and after, Brian. I thought you were working on this before Adam first day at Struction Site, and now last
I was
day.
looking. I found a baby photo of Adam that I wanted to Photoshop, but I think he's had a beard since he was 10. So
It came in early.
Yeah.
That's awesome, fellas.
Well, next week we need to run that Oscars in memoriam, and we'll just slideshow a bunch of Adam's videos.
There it is.
Fully bearded.
I'm sure we could find some pictures. I know
Those
there'll
lifetime
be
achievement awards are typically are they do they give those out to folks that are alive or have since passed?
I don't know.
Peak.
I'll say
They're at the peak of their career, and it's all downhill. Just give it to them.
4 years. 4 years in a
first.
startup is honestly a massive feat. So
yeah, it is crazy to think. Yeah,
It's been fun.
You-
Two
you-
startups, right? There's an
Yeah.
acquisition in there too, which was man, talk about another learning experience.
Yeah, I think that's a multiplier of 5x, Brian. So we're easily at 10x or 10 years now with the years and the duration. So
Startup years are like dog years or what?
that's what I've heard. TBD on the verdict's out on that one. Well, Adam, it's been fun, man. Thanks for hanging on with us and even sharing just your next steps. And you're not going too far. So for those that do have Adam's number, you heard it here first, not changing. But I'm sure they can still track you down on LinkedIn. So
Hit me up. And I mean, I think it's probably worth, I know we're trying to wrap it up here, but it's probably worth shouting out to like the folks that we have interacted with, that I've gotten to interact with outside of Drone Deploy, right? The industry folks, all these superintendents that I've been working with, the VDC and tech folks that we've, interacted with in all these various companies that have supported us along the way. I'm thankful, and I've learned a ton from all of them as well, and look forward to, again, continuing to interact with, other folks in the industry. So yeah, if you've got my number, keep it, and I'll see you at 100 days.
love it. Appreciate it, fellas. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week. Take care.